Hi.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is Syd from the Social Tree Climbers.
Hello.
Yeah, thanks for coming all the way out to the woods, sort of 2 hours west of London, deep in the woods, sitting on a decking outside the Chief's Den, which is a few yurts put together just with the birds and the trees and a campfire. So yeah, I do a lot of retreats here and it's just a really beautiful spot. So I'm really glad that you drove all the way.
It's an absolute privilege to come to this place and be so off the grid. And to describe them as a few yurts put together, people should come and see for themselves. There's a touch more to it than that. They're gorgeous. Yeah, what a place. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for coming. Yeah, I could happily live here. I love being here so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Real Life Club. You are guest number 1.
Wow. Better not mess it up.
No pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a little bit about the Real Life Club, and the idea behind it is that it's sort of an argument for like what I do and we do at the Wild Times. The Wild Times is my yoga and adventure retreats business. I've been running for about 4 years now, that you know, because you came and helped me on my very first photo shoot before it even really existed.
Fun it was.
Yeah, that was a good day up in the trees. And yeah, the Real Life Club really, for me, it's all about why we need real life connection to each other and to nature. We're sort of in this age where everyone's online 24/7. We're always available. We're sort of like hyper connected through screens. But what I do at the Wild Times and what hopefully these conversations will be about is, why we need real life connection. And, you get so much more from someone like sitting across from them and, body language and tone of voice and eye contact and everything.
Absolutely.
And we're supposed to be, sitting around campfires. This is how we've evolved. So yeah, and just why being out in nature's good for us and why we need to reconnect and get back to it. So if you could just say a little bit about what you do and a little bit about the Social Tree Climbers.
Sure. Okay, so I climb trees safely and respectfully with ropes and harnesses. So the technical side is all borrowed from arboriculture. So it's all done to the highest possible safety standards. But I try and make it feel like play, because I think people learn 10 times faster when they're playing than when they're working. So I kind of keep the 100 things that could kill you climbing a tree to myself and just tell people the 3 things that keep you alive, and then let them find the purpose to it all, which is really nice. So I first climbed a tree back in 2008 and was just hooked in terms of the experience of being off the ground in another living thing, these great, amazing entities we're surrounded by, and hooked on the shiny equipment, and the people that seem also to be drawn to getting off the ground into trees. And then slowly but surely it's evolved into Social Tree Climbers. It's taken a long time to get the conditions. There are so many factors to starting your own little business where things can just fall down. And it finally all came together back in 2019, just in time to stop again for a little while. Something happened. And then it bounced back into green spaces beautifully, which I think is something we've both seen happen, is people really value their time together outdoors. And so are looking for lots of different ways to spend that time, one of which is climbing trees. And it keeps on giving me new insights, new lessons, new experiences, meeting new people, and the thousands of unique reactions and responses that I've seen, all kinds of people from all walks of life. You really do see a change in people when you show them that they don't think they can get up a tree, but they actually can when they know how and put their mind to it. It's great. And speaking to your point about being together and being together outdoors and in nature, it's a phrase I'm borrowing, and I'll have to find out where I first heard it or where it originates. But I call it human Wi-Fi, ironically. It's when people are together, you get a whole different level of communication. We all know, don't we, from Zoom, from lockdown, from all of those things, how much was lost in translation. So getting people together and really getting stuck into non-verbal communication, accepting the fact that, is it 80% of what we communicate is non-verbal? And it's something I've learned about it's going to get a little bit out there now, but communication with trees. Trees don't speak Welsh or English, to my knowledge, but I am left with a feeling when I've been with some trees, and they're all different. I suppose some people would argue I'm projecting something onto them, and I'm prepared to listen to that. But also I think there is something being shared by these other living things that is all about nonverbal communication. So I think that's something we do have in common with them, with us as humans and them as trees. But I think there's something in it that we can explore. So yeah, that's kind of why I do this, is just to help people connect with trees, and maybe it'll help.
Thank you. And this is why I wanted to get you on, because we first met when you messaged me on Instagram.
I think it might have been Facebook.
Was it Facebook?
And ironically, it was the algorithm of Facebook.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, ironically. But yeah, so I got a message. What was it, 2020?
Yeah, it would have been.
Yeah, and it was sort of like between some lockdowns or something, and
right.
You just messaged me, and I was living in a cabin in the New Forest at the time, and sort of really starting to work on the idea of the wild times and organising the retreats. And you just messaged me and said, hey, do you want to come climb a tree? And I was like, well, yeah, sounds good. So I just went to the woods, met a strange man in the woods.
Very trusting of you, isn't it?
I thought, he seems pretty good.
Do people's eyebrows, if you ever explain this, do they just slowly, like, you did what?
Yeah, and then we just met in the woods in the New Forest.
Yeah.
And it was cold. It was like winter.
It was.
And spent ages in the tree.
You did. Bartholomew the beech tree. Yes.
What I just really loved your enthusiasm for what you do. You know, you're so, like, even, you name the trees, you have like such a relationship with these certain trees that you love climbing.
Absolutely.
And also you just know so much. And so it was weird because you sort of think, oh, what is like this tree climbing? But it's almost like rock climbing in a tree with, you wear a harness and a helmet and you sort of hoist yourself up.
Yep.
And then you're up there, and then that's what I loved, is we're up there and you're sort of hanging out on the branches and swinging around in your harness, and we were up there for ages, and there was really something, I don't know what it was, and it's hard to put into words, but you must see this all the time with everyone you take up the trees, but it really does do something to you.
It does.
And
yeah,
it's like something about the perspective and being in the canopy of the trees, and especially with you just telling me so much. I'm like, just tell me more tree facts.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, I love it.
Okay.
And yeah, you do. It almost does like feel like some sort of spiritual experience. It's amazing.
I think it is.
Yeah.
That's why, if it quacks like a duck. The trees do give us so much. They teach us so much. Every day I try and put ropes in trees. I make sure I ask the tree nicely if we can kind of come aboard, permission to come aboard, please. Because some trees really will confound any attempt to climb them if you go there with the wrong energy, if you go there with the wrong state of mind, if you bring the wrong karma to that tree, you're not going to get anywhere. You've got to go there wanting to connect with it, to commune with it, and to kind of have it accept you. So it is about permission. It is about meeting the tree with an open heart, I think. There are little invisible creatures, little throwline gremlins that live up in the canopy, I'm sure, that when we first try and get ropes into the top of the tree to climb them safely, they will just take and tangle your throw lines and tie them in impossible knots around twigs. And yet, if you go with the right state of mind, it's funny how little of that can happen, and you can be in a tree really quickly. So yeah, there's always a lesson in climbing a tree, and it usually involves a bit of reflection, a bit of self-awareness of what's wrong here. It's never the tree. Trees obviously have this great kind of stoic presence, and it's not them, it's us. It's what am I bringing to this experience? So yeah, there's a lot in there with that. And then it kind of all opens up from there. The higher you go, the more time you spend up in the canopy, you kind of lose track of time. I've had lots of people
I found that
who, when they're on their way down, they think to take a photograph, say, and of course, taking a photograph these days involves notifications because your camera is your computer. And so they suddenly realize they've missed 8 calls, they've missed a meeting. And I'm fond of saying to clients or anyone that I climb with, there is no time in the trees. When folks arrive at the climbing site, often it's a family and they've been through it. They've been through that vortex to get the kids off the tablets out into the car, to get the wellies and the umbrellas and the picnic, and they're late in their world, and they'll arrive at the entrance to the site and the window will come down and you can just feel the steam coming out of that car because everyone's in a mood, because none of it's happening like they hoped. And the interesting thing is they're all concerned about time. They will all say, you know, sorry we're late, and, you know, we won't have as long to climb the trees. And the first thing I'll say to them is there's no time here. It doesn't affect when we finish. I guarantee you will get tired before me. And so I will never stop anyone climbing if they book a session and they're enjoying it, unless something else crashes into it in another schedule. I say, keep climbing. And oftentimes they will lose all sense of time, and just, you can see them change. I let them drive down to the trees. I will kind of lock the gates behind them just because it's a public access thing, and then walk down to meet them. And by the time they've pulled up, by the time they've looked at the ropes I've rigged ahead of time and got out of the car and stretched their legs, you sense that human Wi-Fi again, this lifting of the pressure, and they're just kind of ready to flop about on ropes and trees. You start really getting into it. It's lovely. Yeah.
I remember as well when I was up the tree and I just said, I was like, you need to meet my brother. You guys are going to be friends. And then now you and my brother are best friends.
Yep. One of my favourite humans on the planet. And the thing I love about Will is I've met lots of people through Will. And you know how it is when a friend introduces a friend and then you become friends with that friend and then you see that friend separately. It's all really interesting about how this network continues, this human connection. But Will really is the kind of cohesion. He's the glue between it all. And so it's always better when Will's around. He's just the loveliest man. I haven't seen him in forever, so I need to find him. But
yeah, he's a nice boy.
Yeah, thank you. You were totally right. It was probably the second thing you said to me.
Yeah, I know. It was funny, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I know that you go to California.
Yes.
Can you tell me a bit about that?
Oh boy, yeah. So when I was first learning to climb trees, obviously in the UK, we have tall trees here, but nothing like the behemoths around the world. And it just really fortunately, I think the people I was learning to climb with had an interest in these epic trees. There's kind of a semi-famous book called The Wild Trees, all about kind of the first canopy scientists to start climbing and researching in the coastal and giant redwoods in California. And so they kind of became the gleaming spires in the distance of somewhere to go and get 100 meters in the air. If you think a lot of the trees in the UK are going to be up around the 20 or 30 meter mark, which are still a spectacular experience. They still take a great deal of gumption to get up them and so forth. But when you go and actually start seeing the coastal redwoods in Northern California and the giant redwoods, the southern distribution more, there's just something else going on. And they are 3,000-4,000 years old. So to go and climb those trees is just mind-blowing. A huge privilege. They're very well protected, obviously, because there's such a small percentage of them remaining after all the logging that's gone on. So the remaining population is very well protected. There's some parts of it you shouldn't even go near. So not all trees need climbing. But some of those trees are on private land. You can get the owner's permission. I'm lucky I have insurance and I have the wherewithal to go and climb those trees legally and ethically. And so, yeah, I've been out there in my life now 4 times.
I remember you saying something about there's like a conference or convention or something in California.
Yeah, well, it's mobile, but the year I went back in 2019, that was what they called the Tree Climbers Rendezvous. And so it is kind of the community of tree climbers. It's usually quite US-centric. It hasn't been hosted outside of the US area. Oh, boy. Real life club. Sometimes life's a hair sandwich.
Oh, my God, I love
Tongue
it.
comb. Checks. So yes, the Tree Climbers Rendezvous, it was being hosted in Northern California. And yes, we, at one point, in the trees had something like 85 tree climbers, all up and around the 200, 250 foot mark. And just the nuttiest thing of being able to take in all that around you. You're near Highway 101, so you're kind of near civilization, and then to look across these absolutely monumental trees and see other climbers in the tops of trees and kind of catcall to them and just give them a wave. There were people getting granola bars delivered by drone into the tops of the trees, and so we're always adapting our minds to the structure of trees, and I think that changes our pathways in our brains to adapt to all kinds of things. So we're always looking for the fun. People hanging upside down at 80 meters in a tree. It's lush.
Is it Hyperion or something, the tallest tree in the world?
I believe that's the current record holder. The tree they call hidden. Hyperion. It's meant to be a secret location. You can find it online. It was made a bit of a rock star of a tree in the book The Wild Trees, because it was discovered by a canopy scientist, and they've actually kind of stopped naming trees now. They just give them really boring code numbers like asteroids, I think. I haven't been following it terribly closely, but I completely understand how giving a tree a rock star name and telling people where it is can be very detrimental to the ecology of that tree and its surroundings. So you kind of got to be careful with those things. But the one that they found bigger, I believe, but they're being kept under wraps to a degree, even though they're all our trees. Not all trees need climbing. And so I'd love to go and visit those trees when it is safe and respectful. But at the same time, there are so many that it's okay not to. Yeah, but Hyperion, I believe, is the tallest they claim.
When you said you first climbed a tree in 2008?
Yeah, I think so.
Where was that? What happened?
I would have had a desk job. I was working as a proofreader and editor, glued to a screen.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it paid really well, but really bad for my health. I was in really bad shape. And on a break, trying to take a screen break, trying to get some exercise, I saw some chaps taking down an oak tree in a farm lane, not terribly safely, but it looked like fun. And so I had a little dream back then of buying a chunk of land and building a little earth-sheltered dwelling on it and harvesting timber on site to do that. So I wanted to go out and learn to use a chainsaw properly, to go and actually get an accreditation for it. And luckily, the chap who taught me to use a chainsaw on the ground was a climbing arborist and did training for that as well. And he let me have a go very kindly. I was in such poor shape. My lower back was so frozen up that I couldn't actually get my leg perpendicular to my body to even start climbing. He was showing me probably one of the most basic methods of tree climbing called body thrusting. Very, very physically demanding. And so trying the hardest technique when I was in bad shape was a real lesson to me that you should be able to do that. There are more ergonomic and more efficient ways to climb, which I use now, but I still go back to the old ways because they're simple and really effective if you get into trouble. And so it was a bit of a flag for me to say you need to make some changes in your life. And I just loved it. I'm always been a bit of a gearhead in whatever hobbies I've had. And so seeing all the shiny, as we call it, the climbing equipment, the pulleys, the carabiners, the very specifically designed pieces of equipment and engineering just for climbing trees. And oh, you okay?
Yeah.
I've got some goggles.
It's just you don't think about well, you should think about, obviously, sitting around a campfire, you're going to get a lot of smoke in your face.
Real life
You'll
again.
just be crying. Yeah, it's real life.
You're
it's real life, baby.
all the downwind stuff. I've got a comfy seat, haven't I? I bet you're over here for the next.
I need some sunglasses on.
To switch
It's fine. The wind's just moving around. It's all good, yeah.
So 2008, I climbed a tree. I don't think I got a metre off the ground when I first tried it. And so I went away and kind of thought about it and tried to do better. And ever since then, it's just been a constant process of learning, teaching myself, climbing with as many people as possible, and just cramming all the know-how into my head and trying to share it with other people.
Wow. So it's like 16 years.
Is it?
Yes, 2024.
Yikes. Yes, it's flown by, and yet it feels like 100 years. And I just can't get enough of it. I love it. I love sharing it with people. I love seeing people do it.
I just love how, that moment of you're in this office job, you go down the lane, you see guys in a, you know, what, like how different your life would have been if you hadn't seen those guys in a tree, you know?
Yeah.
Sliding doors.
I used to work in television production, and that was a distinct lack of self-care. And it was hell for leather. You just did whatever was necessary to get, you know, there was no such thing as being late. You were replaced before you were late. So you had to be there for call times. You had to be there, and you had to solve your problems. And a lot of peaceful negotiation after the end of the day would have been done in the bar, in the pub, which pushes the end of your day, and then starting again. And yeah, it's interesting. Lovely, lovely people, but hugely demanding on the mind and body. And I got out of that, and I actually went and worked on a farm. It was an organic beef farm, and the farmer was also a researcher for the Soil Association. And a really interesting time, but a couple of arborists used to go and just fell dead standing softwood trees on the farm for firewood for the farm. And so they got a bit of practice, and the farmer got a bit of firewood. And I met those guys, and that kind of started the link. So it was actually out in the woods harvesting firewood that I met a couple of guys who said, you ever want to learn to do any of this, call this guy. And it all flowed from there. Yeah,
because when I met you, I had not heard of like tree climbing as a thing.
Yep.
And then, yeah, I think a lot of people still don't really know what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting in that sense. I would love to help bring about the paradigm shift from tree climbing, what on earth's that, to you have a rucksack by your back door, you're heading out, and you say to your friends or family or loved ones, I'm just going climbing. And they ask you, oh, trees or rocks? I know there are hotspots for climbing in rocks in the UK, and a lot of people have to travel. It's about accessibility, just the time it takes to get to them and go and climb on them. And there's a lot going on around that. Trees are everywhere. There's one there, look, and there. And I would love for people to have a better understanding. Every time I walk past the big tree in a park in the city, I wonder why there isn't someone up there enjoying a coffee safely, reading a good book, having that conversation, a difficult conversation in a tree, an easy conversation. All those things, they are there, I think, for that reason. So, and then being managed expensively by our local governments for our benefits. And it costs the same to manage a tree to sit under it as it does to climb it. So they could be making connections in the vertical axis as well as underneath. So yeah, imagine if it was more readily and easily recognised, and we had something like a council that offered a club insurance and that people could just get together in cities and towns. I'm going to start doing this month. If we're in this month, next month, just going into the city centre, and I'm going to rig up a couple of ropes and just let people come and climb in town.
Which city?
Southampton. I'll be in Watts Park. That's where I'm going to start. I'll have some ropes in the trees in Watts Park. You'll find me.
Yeah, and I love that because I think that is a lot about like accessibility and sort of permission and people thinking like, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to be there, or I'm not allowed there, or I don't know how to access like natural environments, whatever. But, you know, it's like London is a national park city, and it actually has a lot of green spaces and so many beautiful parks. And, you know, I live right by Hampstead Heath, and that is, like, you feel like you're in the New Forest, like it's proper woodland in the middle. I think it's a vortex as well. Like, every time I go into the Heath, I get lost. There's all these rumours that like Boudicca's buried there, and there's always like witches out there at full moon doing rituals, and like, I love it. It's mad. And there's springs that come up there that flow all through the city. And, you know, London has all these like hidden underground rivers and springs. But yeah, I think, you know, it's like, there is, even if you do live in a big city, if there is a park or there is green space, like accessing that and, you know, maybe using it in a different way, like climbing trees. Yeah, I think it's super important.
It is, and it's about learning to do it safely and respectfully that doesn't hurt the trees, doesn't hurt the people beneath them that do want to sit in their shade. There's obviously a negotiation there about all the different people who want to use the trees for all the different reasons. So yeah, there's a lot of clarification to do, but there's enough of them. You know, we can share. We can share, we can work together if we get together.
If we get together.
Yes.
And can you tell me a few facts about trees?
Sure.
Just to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I love that. You can pick young leaves on beech trees, and you can make beech gin, I think. You can make a liqueur with beech leaves.
Amazing.
Which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
I am told. And I'd really love to do that and leave it to steep and mature actually in the canopy, if you can secure the bottles hanging up in the tree from which they're picked, and then invite people to come and kind of enjoy and celebrate the tree, and then let them come and enjoy.
I think that's a little side hustle there.
Yeah. Beech trees would be pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't even know to begin to describe the habitat that trees provide. Going back to beech trees, I'm not saying I've got a bias, but going back to beech trees, I think they did some research relatively recently. They found out that a beech tree takes about 200 years to become ecologically useful.
Wow.
And how many 200-year-old beech trees do you see? People get nervous around them and think they're going to fall over or damage what's below them. But if you can leave a beech tree to grow, it will take from the world around it and sink the carbon and all of that stuff, and then it will start to mature at around 200 and just become the home with all that aerial deadwood in them, all those branches that they decide they don't need anymore that keep hanging on up there. That's when they really start to give back. So find an ancient beech tree and just look at all the fungus, look at all the insects, look at all the birds following that, and start to see that they are entire, pretty damn gorgeous ecosystems in and of themselves. But let old trees grow old gracefully. Yes, we can manage them for our safety, but that doesn't mean removing them. So don't be too scared. So yeah, that's one of my favourites, is that it takes a really long time. They're on a totally different time frame to us.
I remember you saying, is it cambion?
So the most delicate and important part of a tree, you could argue, is the cambium, which is the very soft growth area just under the bark.
Smoked out again.
Jan.
Don't worry about me. It's fine. I'll just be crying.
Get very emotional about trees.
I'm just getting really emotional talking about trees.
The cambium layer is the part of the tree that's growing. So when you see a log that's been sawn through and you have growth rings, at one point the cambium layer was where each of those rings is. And so year on year, those rings increase because the cambium layer keeps moving outwards.
So that's how it creates the rings in the tree.
Exactly that. And so if you count the rings and you look at the size of those rings, you'll see what kind of a year that tree had. And you can count back, you can kind of look at meteorological records, you can see kind of how much rainfall there was. And so big rings, usually thicker, will mean that tree put on a real growth spurt that year. And thinner rings may well mean that it had a drought or it had a harder time for whatever reason. So you can read the rings of a tree depending on how kind of vigorous the growth was in those growth rings. In a perfect world, you'd never see the rings because trees would last forever. But that is a way to read them, is to look at that in your firewood or in just logs found lying around. But it's one of the things that might suffer if you climb a tree disrespectfully, because your ropes are going up the tree, because your feet are going up and down the stem, right there under that bark. Some trees have really chunky bark, like the big redwoods or oak trees, and they're pretty much going to be okay, whatever we as puny humans try and do to them. Other trees, like beech trees and pine trees, can be a little bit more delicate and softer. So when you're climbing, one of the things we will do is put a cambium saver, a cambium protection equipment in, so that the ropes don't hurt the tree, so that you can keep climbing them without harming them.
So the cambium is the outer...
It's the outer layer would be the bark.
Yeah.
Just under the bark, you'll find the cambium. It's a bit like trying to tell if one of your little plants has died, one of your little trees has died, and you scratch it with a thumbnail, you'll see green.
Yeah.
It's still living. That green is basically the cambium layer. There's more to it when you dial into that, but basically that part is the growing, living part of the tree that's forever expanding and kind of putting on wood, putting on timber inside of it.
Putting on timber. The wood wide web.
Ah. Yeah.
So trees communicate with each other.
So they say.
And there's a mycelium network and the whole the whole plant kingdom.
The fungus.
The fungus.
The humongous fungus among us. There's a lot of this about now. There's a lot of talk about it.
What do you think?
It's got to be true, isn't it? There's so much science about it. I think it's more complicated than we would care to admit, but in a really good way. I think it's fascinating. I think it's kind of delicate and precarious, and we've really got to respect it. But I think they do amazing things. There's some really good books out now which help us kind of anthropomorphize these things. It simplifies things so we can get our heads around what's going on. But yeah, basically there are tree species that cooperate with fungal species, and they're all very specific, and they all kind of help each other. So 2 different tree species can help each other. And a really good demonstration of that, I am told, is where some trees have been felled and you leave a tree stump, but somehow that stump keeps living, it regenerates, it grows back, despite not having anything like the mechanisms it should have to keep growing. And that's because adjacent trees, they're friends. And so they are connecting electronically.
Keeping it alive.
Yeah. There is a relationship between the fungus, the mycelial network, the mushrooms, and the trees, in that trees make sugar, which they will give to the mushroom networks, and the mushroom networks can get minerals from the soil, which they will give to the trees. So they connect under the ground. But also they're finding out more and more about how some trees are able to share through that mycelium, that mushroom network, with other trees. And so adjacent trees can support sickly trees and give them what they're missing. And they're looking into all of the electrical signals that go on through those networks. And it's mind-blowing.
You were saying something to me earlier about how you're helping a friend out.
Yes.
Say about the bees.
So Attenborough has a really great explanation about this online, so look that up. But basically it's to do with electrical charge in plants and flowers and insects. Of course, trees are flowering plants, some of them. And a little bee flying along will have an electrical charge, and a little flower waiting to be pollinated, which is kind of the whole point of it, will have another electrical charge. And the bee can sense the flower, and so will land on it and get what it needs, but also pollinate that flower. And that very act of landing on it changes the charge of the flower, so that other bees who are flying along detecting these charges don't go and double pollinate or repollinate this flower because it doesn't need it. So they know to go to a separate one which has. So there's a whole other kind of airport going on, all to do with these electrical fields around things. And just the more I hear about it, the more complex it gets. It's never that simple. However, the more fascinating it gets. It's all about the little things, the tiny details that thankfully science is doing wonders with. Yeah, it's really great.
Yeah. I love that. Just just learning and learning more and more. And I think having this knowledge about even how trees like communicate and, look after a sick tree, or look at the mother tree looks after the baby trees. And I think it just, the more you know about it, the more you sort of like respect and appreciate. You
know better, you do better.
Yeah. And just knowing more about nature can really like help improve your relationship with it, and really understand. And
any time in nature is never wasted, and the more you bring to it, the more you're going to take away, because to me it's like if you go away and mug up on something really nosy about nature, you build a shelf in your head to go and put things on, so that when you go out you're looking for evidence to support that new learning maybe. And so you kind of connect with it more just because it's in you, it's in your mind. And let alone the fact that we go into nature taking our electrical charge with us and then connect with the great big battery that is the outdoors in all of those lovely ways. So yeah, mind and body doing both.
Yeah. And you do just get so much back from it as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's almost like it sort of goes beyond words, Yep. Like we have words, like a tree is a tree, but also it doesn't quite encapsulate
feelings.
The actual lived experience.
Yeah. It's a tricky one coming back into the everyday life, into life admin and all of those things. When you've had a profound experience in the trees, when you've spent time with people in and amongst the trees, and you've seen the changes, and you've seen so much come out of them to each other, with each other, for themselves. It's really interesting to go and sit in traffic after that. Trees again.
So I have a few questions, maybe.
Questions?
I've got just a few questions. Where is your favourite wild place?
Oh, I mean, I may not have met it yet. I'm open to that. Right now, I say I will die happy in Northern California and amongst those trees. If that really is wild enough. Jedediah Smith State Park, Northern California, the Damnation Trail. Something happened there. We were there.
Damnation Trail.
We were there last autumn, and we just went for 2 weeks of tree worship, and we had that one perfect day that doesn't happen too often, where the mists had rolled in off the sea, and it does go ocean, rocks, redwoods, and there's a trail down to the sea from up near the highway, so it's managed. It's not that wild. And the mist is held in the trees. The way those trees get so big is that they can take in water through their canopies. Tree fact for you. They can, not just through their roots, they can take it in through their canopies. And so when the sun comes out, those mists will burn off, but they sit in and amongst the trees. And so we were walking on the trail, the sun had come out. So looking up through the mist, you can see blue sky, a little like what we can see. But in the trees, it's like it's had a fog machine running all day for, a movie maker. But the sun was coming in those Jacob's ladders through the redwoods. And all you can hear, the soundtrack to all of this, is the ocean breaking on the rocks. But you can't see the sea for this dense forest of redwoods around you. So you're walking along the trail, you're hearing the ocean and the coast, and you're seeing this just profound light coming through the mist that's being held there as a water reservoir, an aerial water reservoir for these epic trees. And yeah, I fell to my knees at one point. It's like I can't, It's like, yes. So yeah, that's pretty nice.
Sounds pretty wild.
I like that.
Yeah.
Luckily no bears. So if it had been wilder, I should have been, proper wildness.
Chased by a bear.
Should have been some charismatic megafauna there maybe, but that's a favourite. Yeah.
That sounds
amazing.
absolutely
and
spectacular.
The growth on those trees, the epiphytic growth, the plants growing on the plants at height, trees growing in trees, they're so high up, stuff that's just self-set or been left there by birds or what have you. Just taking all that in, it's just so rich. If you think Mexico City's busy or Tokyo's busy, go and zoom in on just one of those trees and see the life in it. Yeah.
Wow. I need to go to California. What would you like your legacy to be?
Yikes.
Or
Thanks
be
for
remembered
asking that.
for?
That's a lot, isn't it?
I know. It's quite a big
really
one.
Big, crikey. And it's going to be really revealing what I say, isn't it? Wouldn't it be nice if somewhere in the history of tree climbing for well-being, that my name was somewhere in that flow of it all, just to be a supporter of it, just someone heard someone that remembered it. Yeah, just to be remembered well in the trees if I can. It's why I just love teaching kids how to do it, because they're going to hopefully remember that time they climbed that tree, and it was the beginning of something, not unlike the time I climbed that tree, and it was the beginning of something. And so to be instrumental in the growth of something, so that people ask you if you're going to climb trees or rocks, to have a little part in that would be lush. Thank you.
Thank you. I like that answer. What would be your one tip for someone who wants to connect or reconnect to nature?
My one tip. Start. My parallel for that would be meditation. Am I doing it right? Am I connecting to nature right? I went through a phase of asking all of these amazing people I've been lucky enough to run into about meditation. How do you do it properly? And probably the most liberating and the most wonderful thing somebody said to me, Pavani, amazing human, she said to me, "You're probably just a noisy meditator." I'm like, what? and that just said, everyone does it differently. And so to connect with nature, do it your way. There's no wrong way to connect with nature. Get out, take your socks off, get mud on you, and just do it. And just start. Don't judge yourself. Don't think there's a handbook and you haven't read it. Get out there, get on with it, touch it, feel it, smell it, taste it. Make sure it's not poisonous. Practice safe nature.
Or maybe it's magic.
Start. Yeah, and smile. Smile at everyone else. Say hello and smile. You never know who needs to hear that hello, whether it's a plant or whether it's a human or a dog friend.
Always a dog.
Start would be my answer. There's no wrong answers. And the right people will only help, will only connect, will only nurture more. The wrong people won't. Don't worry about that. Don't go near them. They're on their own journey and they need someone else's help.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think just to sort of like, well, a couple of things to round it off. Why do you think it's so important, like right now, in this like time in 2024, that it is important that we connect to nature and to each other?
In a time where there is so much about the self, maybe, is that a good word? That's a thing, isn't it? We're all going for that. That it's never been more important to think of the other, to think of others, to think of what we have in common, not what's different, but to share what's in common so we can celebrate our differences. I heard that recently in an interview where someone was saying, you know, we are so all alike. We're so the same underneath. We're on this earth to love and care for each other. That's literally the meaning of life. How can so many people come back from interesting experiences in their minds and come back with that same message the world over, without that meaning something really fundamental? And so to be outside, to be together, is all about learning how to love and care for each other better. And it's never been more important than now, when so much of our environment is challenged by us being perhaps selfish. So selflessness and connection and celebration of difference, because we're all the dang same underneath. Get on with that. Look at commonality. Look at what we all want. We all want the same things. Really, we're just dressing them up differently.
So, Syd, where can people find you?
In a tree.
In a tree. Yeah, just look.
Sorry.
Just look up,
Sorry,
and you
right.
might see Syd. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great? They can find me on the interwebs. There's a Google business listing, as you would hope. Social Tree Climbers. There are emails. hello@socialtreeclimbers.co.uk. There's a phone number, so you can reach out to me on WhatsApp. So you can call me up. The only thing better than climbing trees is talking about climbing trees. So please, if you want to talk about climbing trees, just give me a call. Yep. And if I can, I will answer. I may be up a tree, so I apologise if I sound occasionally distracted. But yeah, you can reach out. I think I've got an Instagram and the Facebooks, all of those lovely things. I don't do enough of those things on social media. Interestingly, I think my challenge with that is finding my authentic voice for this electronic world.
Yeah.
I get that it's an amazing networking tool. I get that with just a little bit of work, you can reach a massive audience and really start, ironically, getting people off their phones and out into nature that way. But I'm still looking for my authentic voice. I think my problem is I've got a very dark sense of humour, so I find trouble filtering that. But yeah.
But I think that's quite an interesting, challenge in these times, because I'm, I don't know, with this as well, I sort of am arguing that we should realize that we're cavemen still, living in like a very, advanced technological society that's sort of advanced too fast for our caveman
cyborg cave people. Yeah, for
our caveman bodies and minds and nervous systems to like catch up with. But I find that too with the Wild Times. I get so many bookings and I've met so many people through social media. It's people who've become really good friends and have come and done workshops, and loads of people find the Wild Times through Instagram. And I spend a lot of time on it, but at the same time, you're using it as a tool digitally to get people to come and be with you in real life. Yeah. You have to be active on social media and the internet and websites and stuff to get the message out there. But it's like interacting with people online to encourage them to get offline.
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah, and even like this podcast the whole podcast is about getting out into nature, and I've dragged you guys all here to the woods. But in real life,
really
kicking and screaming. But yeah, it is that. You know, this I'll be promoting this like on social media, and it'll be on YouTube and stuff so people can watch it. But really, it's to try and get people outside. So I almost hope that they turn it off.
It's a gentle way of doing that.
Yeah.
Things like podcasts and radio, you know, old-fashioned radio, you can listen to that while doing other things, whilst still getting out there. Your hands are free. You've got your headphones, your buds. So I think podcasts are least invasive, and it's just a nice way to introduce new ways to get outside, like you do, like I do. But just start, isn't it? That's key. And it's something somebody said about, I got a booking from a company that builds oil pipelines. And it's that great ethical question of, do I take a corporate petrochemical company tree climbing? But you've got to be in the room with them. You've got to be at the table. You've got to show them, you know, if you only show one person that 1% change in direction. So you have to be on social media. And I've got lots of friends I know through the School for Social Entrepreneurs and other organizations who say, do more with your Instagram, because then at least it's one more positive feed out there for the doom scrollers to maybe take them on the tangent that means they put the phone down. So yeah, we have to do it. I've just got to find my authentic voice. So sorry, everyone, I haven't done it yet. I will.
It's all good.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Syd.
Thank you, Jenny. This has been lush.
Oh,
Thanks for listening.
so nice. Yeah, apart from, you know, crying with all the smoke in my eyes.
You got the
big gusts of wind. But the whole point is it's real life, guys. So, you know, we're doing that. It's a beautiful day now as well, isn't it?
It's great.
Putting it in the sauna in a bit.
The stronger the breeze, the stronger the trees. Remember that. Don't scare the trees on a windy day. It makes the trees grow strong.
You need to like get some t-shirts with all these slogans.
I think they're out there. I'm pretty sure they are. You should have a look on Instagram. There's probably some great t-shirts.
Hey. Don't go on Instagram, go outside.
Wah, wah, wah.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you. This has been really nice.
Yeah, it's been lovely.
Really nice to organise my thoughts about these things.
Yeah.
Good questions.
Well, yeah, we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah.